Hi, everyone. Third time lucky. I keep trying to start this summary and things happen. Anyway, this is the end of our excursion into distributed cognition, and as such, we're kind of really two-thirds of the way through the course, but also we've covered all of the major concepts, I think, that directly have contributed to our understanding of constructivism. So thank you to Laurelie and Peter and Jessica for their excellent moderation this week. They also provided a really nice and very comprehensive summary here. And that's, here we go. So there were some very interesting discussions that happened this week, and they've pulled together a lot of the instructional issues that came up, both from the perspective of the teacher and also perspective of student learning. A summary also of the different applications that people had mentioned that might be useful in this regard, and and this nice little summary of the artifacts and the challenges and the issue of problem-based learning in the classroom. So those were all great. And there was also a discussion. We got into nature versus nurture this week too, which isn't a direction I would have predicted that we'd have got to, but we had a good discussion there. And the kind of various influences, including family and social learning and other things. And I think there was a question arose actually at that time from somebody in the course, and I thought it was a good one because I hadn't really addressed it before, that in all of the different ways that we're understanding learning in the course, we're not really looking at it from the point of view of personality factors, which, we all know from our own personal experience how, motivation and your sort of all the different factors that we could call personality may influence how we actually learn. But and part of the reason why that's not really I'm not really talking about that is, first of all, I have too many other things to talk about, but also because I think issues of personality never really contributed directly to constructivist theory. And part of the challenge with personality theory is that it's all about individuals, and and a lot of what we do around learning theory is inevitably around trying to understand learning in a more kind of group level way, in a larger, looking at larger populations. And so it's not always helpful looking at things from a personality point of view, because they're not always very predictive, and that's tended to be our kind of objectivist sort of scientific frame that we've used to date. And we tend not to look at individual difference work quite as much. But mainly for this course, I haven't used it because it doesn't really figure in the different concepts that led to constructivism. So not that it's not important, but it's not as systematic as some of these other things. So the summary chart of differences also, which was another interesting. This Laurelie posted this one. No. Where am I? The comparison chart. That's right. Here it goes. I added some of the differences here because I thought it might help us, because these things are a bit hard to distinguish sometimes. So distributed cognition really is a theory about learning as an interdependent system, and you need all of those pieces. The example of Hutchins and the driving the artifact, the air traffic controllers and the plane and the pilot are all an interdependent system. But not all, distributed systems are as kind of equally interdependent, I think. So the distributed constructivism is a more general notion, and has been known really by its term constructionism, because it's usually about creating and building things, and the opportunities through using the internet and other kind of technologies. So they use these things to construct understanding. So it's that relationship between the artifact and the learner, which goes even further in this notion of distributed intelligence, which is P's idea, and also Fisher's, talking about actually how you can think about technology as actually extending our intelligence and our capacity. So it's an empowering potential that in technology brings us. So constructivism generally is this very giant concept, and it's got many pieces. And I think this idea about the connection between activity and intelligence as being accomplished is a very important is an important one. So these ideas, activity, participation, distributed intelligence, are all deeply connected because, sorry, that's the dog making sure that she didn't leave anything in her bowl. I don't know if you can hear this, but because they each contribute a conceptual element to the overall definition of what constructivism in online contexts involves. Um, so, and also PBL and constructivism, which also came up, they're also very, very aligned in the sense that even if the problem might be teacher developed, the actual process of the point of the PBL approach is really to use authentic investigation strategies to allow students to collaboratively solve, kind of real world problems and carry out that solution plan. And I think that's very consistent with P's idea of intelligence as accomplished rather than possessed. So it's through the activity that the learning happens. So intelligence is what you're able to do rather than what just is a kind of capacity thing in your head, which is the traditional way that intelligence has been measured, right? With IQ and so forth, IQ testing and so forth. So now we come to a new week, and our moderators in this week, which marks a sort of shift really in the conceptually, are Julia and Jiwoo, and they've got questions ready for us this week, and I've added at the beginning of this week a couple of comments to sort of orient people to these ideas, because this marks more of a shift, I think, because critical approaches aren't an inevitable part of constructivism, but I think they're a very important part of the information that we need in order to construct our understanding of online learning as teachers. And I think that critical perspectives are markedly absent in the online learning literature, which is interesting because people who use critical theories to understand things tend to not use technologies, and people who tend to use technologies and are interested in online learning tend not to use critical theories. And so, I think that's a problem, and I think we need to be bringing these ideas together more deeply. So I'm hoping that we can do that in our discussion, but I also know that it can be challenging engaging in these critical kinds of perspectives. So I have this note here that talks about it's an introduction for people who haven't perhaps read very much in this area, so please take a look at this. There's an overview site I've linked to, and I've also attached a small article by Michael Apple, and that one looks at what schools, how you can think about critical learning in schooling and why it's important to sort of uncover these kind of really are taken for granted assumptions. So things about power and socioeconomic status and class and gender and race and all of those different sort of categories of thing out there in our culture. And I think the online environment offers both sort of promise and challenges in this area, and they're complex issues. So we're going to think about them a little bit this week. And so one of the other notes that I put here as an introduction is this one. How do we talk about differences in the online environment? Because that, to me, is a really, really critical one. So, I mean, in this course, I've tried to make a kind of safe place for people to talk and a community where people feel safe enough to raise questions, to ask when they don't know, and where people feel respected. But I haven't addressed explicitly issues of difference, and so this is. But we've been through some of these weeks now, so I think we're at a time in the class where it's gelled enough that we can start to have some of these conversations, even if they're not familiar kinds of conversations, and think about these 4 questions I have here about should we be more explicit about issues of difference? Would having pictures help? How do we make judgments about people, even online? So these are these issues of difference in online environments. And how is the situation different for instructors versus students in terms of power and so forth? So I think I want us to kind of have these percolating in the backs of our minds as we're going to talk this week through the articles. And so I think that one of the things that I have found personally to be very important as I think about critical perspectives is that um, I think I need, as an instructor, to be really conscious about who I am, where I come from, what my taken for granted assumptions are, how my own experiences have positioned me in particular ways, how I think about things as a result of that. So it's like, trying to be like the fish in water. We try to be conscious of the water instead of just swimming in it. And so, who we are, our own positionality, our own areas of unfamiliarity, our vulnerability. Um, and I think the way to approach these ideas is with an open-mindedness and with positive intentions, and to just really try to listen and hear people's ideas. So, and I think it's a real challenge because I don't think this kind of there are processes for this kind of thinking in critical theory classrooms, but there's not much of it done in online environments. And so one of the things I'm currently doing actually is working with our Department of Social Justice Education to come up with more inclusive designs for online environments and work with some of the faculty who are a little reluctant to do the online thing. And I want to co-construct with them some pedagogical strategies that take advantage of the online context but are sensitive to inclusiveness, inclusive teaching principles, and embracing kind of diverse learners from different kinds of maybe marginalized communities. And how can we do this? And I volunteered to do this because it's really a direction I want to move more in my own research, because I think it's really important. Unless we really do that, I think that the promise of online learning falls really quite dramatically short if we can't do that kind of work. And so I would like to bring those two solitudes of critical perspectives and online learning theories to a closer kind of proximity. So that's just by way of some context. So I look forward to us being able to talk about these things more online. If you have any questions or you have any concerns during this week, one of the things that I've noticed, and I encourage people to do this, and that's happened in prior years, is that people who are less familiar with having these kinds of explicit discussions about power and gender and race and things sometimes send me private notes or messages or notes in the conference, just making them private to me and adding me as a co-author. If they have questions about, is it appropriate to say this, and you want to check something out, feel free to do that. I'm happy to help. I don't want anybody to feel either that they can't speak or but at the same time I want people to kind of be sensitive. So feel free to raise questions. I'm happy to talk about anything that you want. And yeah, so I look forward to our discussions this week. Oh, and one thing I should tell you, I'm leaving for Brazil on Friday. So I'm going there for a week and to a university and we're looking at issues of literacy and technology, and so it'll be kind of interesting. But so I'm really hoping that I have internet access. I may have it only at the university, but we'll see. It may be fine. I'm not entirely sure yet. So I will keep you posted. But I will somehow or another I will get online and talk to you. So have a great week, and I look forward to seeing what we come up with this week. Okay, take care.